Eventually there's going to be a 2-loss team in college football going to the playoffs. And I'll tell you what, it is my opinion that the first team that is a 2-loss team that makes it to the playoffs, they're coming out of the SEC. Once again, it's K-Stu to go for Vernon Speak Sports, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Want to give a shout out to my fearless and true gang, War Eagle. With the upgrades in coaching, both in the SEC East and the SEC West, you can just about rest assured that here in the near future, there is going to be a 2-loss team coming out of the SEC that is going to make it to the playoffs. Now, Alabama this year is probably the only team that really doesn't, have to worry about it too strong. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they have the best recruiting class in the nation. Also, their schedule is pretty favorable, and it usually is. I mean, really, because they're just so good. It's not because they just purposely schedule cupcakes. But to be honest with you, Notre Dame, Michigan, Florida State are not just knocking on the door trying to play Alabama. They kind of have to play who they can. And it just so happens that one of their non-conference games for this year turns out to be Duke, who went 8-5 in the ACC and got thrashed by Clemson last year, 35-6. Anyway, there's some teams that really have some tough schedules this year. And when I look at that, I look at Georgia, for example. Georgia has Notre Dame. Georgia also has Texas A&M, Auburn, and Georgia Tech to end the season. Luckily, they have Texas A&M at home. But that's some very tough scheduling there. Florida, you can expect Florida to be, a better team than they were last year. So that's going to be another challenge. So you could be looking at a 2-loss Georgia team, who in another conference, I mean, they run right through it. But with who is on the schedule, it's just not far-fetched to say that Georgia be a 2-loss team. Maybe losing to Notre Dame. They definitely can't lose 2 SEC games and make it. Probably not losing to Notre Dame, but let's just say losing to Notre Dame and maybe splitting between Auburn and Texas A&M, going into the to the SEC championship, possibly 2 losses. Auburn is another team as well who, could be somewhat considered as a contender in the SEC West. Easily could lose 2 games. Easily. They got Oregon to begin the season. Everybody's kind of big on Oregon. A lot of analysts suspect that Oregon will be a top 10 team coming into this season. So Auburn out of the gate, tough game against Oregon. Tough games against Texas A&M, LSU. LSU normally plays Auburn pretty tough. Actually, they play them real tough of beating them 2 years in a row. Then we look at later on in the season, guaranteed November hot dates with Alabama and Georgia. Luckily, this is the rotation where Alabama and Georgia come to Auburn. On top of that, Auburn has an open date right before the Georgia game this year. Pretty slick move. But, it's not far-fetched to think that as powerful as the SEC conference is, when you look at these coaching upgrades, all of you just saw the recruiting classes and how they ranked. These are some very high-quality players that are going to these schools, and, 2 losses is not going to be far-fetched at all. When you look at how top-heavy the coaching staff, how top-heavy the recruiting quality is for the SEC. Once again, it's K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speak Sports, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Want to give a shout out to my fearless and true gang, as always, War Eagle and Go SEC.